Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Hoops HQ show. Seth Davis along with Andy Katz. And folks, your eyes are not deceiving you. Andy and I are home. He is in Rhode Island. I am in California. It's been a long, joyful road. Andy, of course, a lot of people say about the NCAA tournament and the work and the travel that we do. But of course, for us, and especially for you, the travel and the hustle starts in early November. So we are home for a little while, reintroducing ourselves to our loved ones. I want to congratulate Andy over the weekend at the Final Four. He was inducted into the United States Basketball Writers Association Hall of Fame. Which, number one, congratulations, obviously,
Thank you.
well-deserved and ludicrously long overdue. So I don't know where we've been at the Basketball Writers. So got a lot of great business taken care of in Indianapolis. But this is college basketball, everybody. And as you know, there is no offseason. We at Hoops HQ are ramping up our coverage of the transfer portal, a little coaching carousel to talk about. Andy and I are going to address all that. But we do want to put a bow on the season, on the tournament, and especially our national champion, the Michigan Wolverines, who, if you really, Andy, I'm sure you would agree, if you look over at the course of the season, they were the best team. A dominant performance through the NCAA tournament. And I'm looking, Andy, at the big picture, specifically Dusty May. He's 49 years old, so he's younger than both of us. This is his second head coaching job, and he has now taken in his young career 2 different schools to the Final Four, including FAU, a mid-major. Really has put himself at the top of the mountain. And then if you're looking ahead to next year, they got a huge recruiting commitment on Saturday, actually during the game. I and a lot of other people have them in my preseason top 5. So what do we make? What are we to make about Dusty May and this Wolverine machine? They going to keep this thing rolling?
Yes, and I will tell you that for the first time that I can remember, there is complete alignment in men's basketball. Football, they're always all in at the big house and everything. That's obviously the main cash cow. But for whatever reason, even at the success that John Beilein had, you never truly felt that the entire university was all in to help that men's basketball program. I have felt that obviously a lot of work, as you do, with the Big Ten Network. And I have really felt that the administration from the top down is all in on men's basketball right now. So that means financially benefiting. They're not going to, whatever you ask for, you get. Obviously, Dusty May played it well in terms of the interest of others. A year ago or 9 months ago, if he had said, you know what, I want to go to Indiana, I wouldn't have been surprised if Indiana would have just taken him, even after 1 year at Michigan, no question. Carolina, the pros, you name it. But he committed to Michigan. They committed to him. He gets it. He also gets the ability how to blend different personalities, his staff as well, transfers together. And, look, I think about the last 2 years, his only 2 years at Michigan, people said, no way can you get Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf to play together, and what do? They played together very well. They won the Big Ten tournament. They had a very good year in his first year. This year, how are you going to get Merez Johnson, Adai Mora, Jackson Lindenborg, all want to be the guy, Ellie Cadeau? How do they all play unselfish? Well, guess what? It worked. They won the title. And so, yeah, I think he's the right guy at the right time, at the right moment for Michigan to have them consistently be one of the best.
Yeah, Andy, as usual, you hit it right on the head. I mean, in today's day and age, that ability to foment chemistry and cohesion and culture on the fly, it's the proverbial building a plane as it's going down a runway. This is 2 years in a row. Last year, I want to say he brought in 7 transfers. This year, he brought in 4, but all 4 were starters. He only had a couple of players, a freshman, and then LJ Kaysen, who's a sophomore who got hurt, who had started their career at Michigan. And we've seen so many situations where it does not work. And so everybody in the sport, everybody in business and other sports needs to study what Dusty has done and the emphasis that he puts on teamwork and sacrifice to build his program is really extraordinary. So, yeah, Michigan's not going nowhere. You want to add something? Go ahead.
I just want to add one quick thing that finally the Big Ten got that title, bookending Michigan State in 2000 in Indy, 26 in Michigan and Indy. Look, the Big Ten had plenty of chances during that stretch. Probably the best chance might have been 2015 Wisconsin when they beat Kentucky undefeated 38-0 and then lost to Duke in those final few minutes. But for the most part, every Big Ten team went in as a slight underdog against big time opponent that was rolling. This time it was reversed. Michigan was the better team. Michigan was the dominant team, and Michigan got it done for themselves and for the Big Ten.
Yeah, and we'll also add, of course, that the UCLA women also a Big Ten team. Now that's a recent addition, so I won't say asterisk, but it's noted that Michigan is a traditional Big Ten team, Indiana football traditional Big Ten team. I think it's the first time that three different teams in the same
It
conference
is.
have won those three. Before we move on from this season, I think we need to give some serious flowers to Dan Hurley and the UConn Huskies. People keep talking about Dan Hurley as being polarizing, and I don't know how he's polarizing. He is very animated and intense during games. He probably goes over the line at times and too often for his treatment of referees. Other than that, and I have to say, in juxtaposition and contrast to the way Gino Auriemma handled things out in Phoenix, Dan Hurley says and does everything right, including on the mental health front and being vulnerable. But the reality is 3 Final Fours in 4 years, 2 championships, and an appearance in the championship game, and somehow stayed in that game against Michigan and took them to the wire. Give us a final thought on UConn season and Dan Hurley in particular.
I thought it was phenomenal. I mean, look, they had a couple of bad losses, Creighton, Marquette. They were great in the non-conference, by the way, despite having a lot of injuries. Like when they lost to Arizona, they didn't have Mullins or Terrace Reed. But I'll just tell you from my perspective, interviewed him a number of times over the weekend for Westwood One and the NCAA, and I found him incredibly accessible, genuine, accommodating, and to be honest, a really good loser, if you will, where he was, hey, Michigan beat us. We had a great year. Obviously, Alex Caravan was a phenomenal talent and winner for him over a 5-year period. But yeah, complete opposite of Gino Auriemma. And really, I thought handled everything quite well the entire weekend in Indianapolis.
Yeah, agreed and well said. All right, we got much more to talk about here on the Hoops HQ show, including a changing of the guard in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, Seth and Andy back with you on the Hoops HQ show. As we were getting ready for Monday night's championship game, news broke that Michael Malone, the former head coach of the Denver Nuggets, won a championship with the Nuggets, was going to be named the new coach at the University of North Carolina. I know he had been mentioned here and there. I know Tyler Hansbrough threw his name out in Field of 68 and some other local reporting, but there was no serious reportage going on that this was headed towards Mike Malone, that he was emerging as a major candidate. It came together rather quickly. Andy, thumbs up or thumbs down on the hire?
I'm going to give it a thumbs up so far. It's different than Bill Belichick, without question. Obviously younger, has the championship coach. I think it's easier to make the transition from NBA to college. We've seen it, obviously, versus NFL to college. He does have his work cut out for him because we're in a new era. It's not like everyone says, oh my God, I got to grow up to play for Carolina or Indiana or all these different schools. Everyone's moving around. The Jumpman logo is all over the place. It's not limited to Carolina, but basketball, X's and O's, he'll be great in that, it's a matter of getting the right guys, having the right staff. I'm going to reserve judgment. I think so far things are going well right out of the gate, and we'll see how it all plays out, but I'm fine with the hire.
I'll give it a thumbs up. I have serious reservations about the hire. First and foremost, quite obviously, extremely limited, not zero, but extremely limited experience in college. There really is not much of a template for NBA coaches coming to college and doing well, although these college programs are run more like NBA franchises.
Yep.
I mean, Kevin Young at BYU is a really good example as a guy who was an assistant coach with the Suns. He came to BYU. Now, BYU is a different place. So Kevin Young is Mormon, LDS, and so he fit into that piece. The support of Alex Smith, the Utah Jazz owner, and Danny Ainge. A little bit of a different deal, but that is the template to say, well, a pro coach maybe in today's era has a better chance as opposed to 5 or 10 years ago, where it's more about the relationships in the AU circuit and the recruiting. There's also a very cold reality that all of the big name coaches that North Carolina and maybe North Carolina fans thought that they could get, they weren't getting. I do wonder if there's a little bit of hubris in play where you have really good but lesser known college coaches. We talked about Mark Byington at Vanderbilt. I mean, Vanderbilt is a perennial doormat in college basketball. Mark Byington, in very short form, turn them into a top 15, top 20 team. Imagine what he could do at North Carolina. I don't know the ins and outs of those conversations. Very hard for me to believe, Andy, that if North Carolina really wanted Mark Byington, they wouldn't have gotten him. Okay. So I think there is a little bit of a sense of, well, he's not a big enough name. I do think that there was this sense of like those guys weren't quote unquote worthy of coming to North Carolina. I think it's a very, very dangerous way of thinking.
Can I just add one quick thing
go
to
ahead.
that?
Go ahead. Tell me
Is
what you think about that last piece of it. Am I being a little
no,
unfair?
No, not at all. But I will say, and I'm not privy to the deeper dive on the books, but all those people you named, they would have had to pay buyouts. No buyout with Malone. And there is a new theory now that, hey, if we're going to spend a lot of money after the coach, actually his own salary, not his buyout, let's invest it in the players. And so, did that save them $8-10 million of not having to buy someone out? And instead, we pay him, whatever that salary is going to be. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's significant, obviously. But we're going to put the rest of the money in the player pool, and so maybe that did factor into it as well.
Well, it seems like they're willing to pay Tommy Lloyd's buyout, and that was an 8-figure buyout. I think the reporting is 6 years, $50 million for Mike Malone. So yeah, super high salary, $8 million a year, but not the buyout, so they're not paying that money as well.
One other quick point in the triangle. I think John Shire did a great job and has done a great job of adding assistants who aren't part of the Duke family. Get outside your bubble. That's why I'm interested to see, okay, they hire Mike Malone as the head coach. Don't have every assistant be a Carolina guy, okay? Justin Gainey now, NC State. He's an NC State guy, not obviously immediate because he was at Tennessee, but, you need a mixture. I'll be interested to see what Jerry McNamara does at Syracuse. It can't only be the family. That's not the road to go right
But don't
now.
you think the pressure's going to be higher on because Mike Malone is from out of the family? So I think there's going to be more pressure from him on him to hire assistants who are in the family, and this is exactly what I am talking about. So I don't know. What do you think about that? Don't you think he's going to have to hire?
Yes, but not the whole staff. But not the whole staff.
Okay. TBD. He's got his work cut out for him, but
yes.
if there's a place to cut that work, it is North Carolina. We'll see how it goes. So anyway, the season is over. The games are over, but the transfer portal madness is just beginning. Andy and I will talk about that when the Hoops HQ show continues right after this. All right, welcome back to the Hoops HQ show, everybody. Seth Davis and Andy Katz. The transfer portal is open. There were already dozens, maybe several hundred players who had declared their intentions to transfer before the portal is open. Now that the portal is open, they're taking visits. There's going to be so much to track. This is the time you really want to subscribe to hoopshq.com. We are partners with the Portal Report. They are tracking all of this for us, all kinds of rankings, insight, intel. It really is the best way to keep track of what's happening with the transfer portal. Again, we're recording this on Wednesday afternoon, so if you're seeing this probably on Friday or a couple of days later, there will be other names that have been added, but already some really big names in the portal. We're publishing our top 50 players in the portal at hoopshq.com, led by Juke Harris from Wake Forest, Flori Badunga from Kansas, John Blackwell from Wisconsin, Paulus Morauskas, St. Mary's, Isaiah Johnson from Colorado. Those are the players that are leading the way in our rankings. Also, Nick Hamania from Duke put his name in the portal. Marcus Burton, a high-scoring guard at Notre Dame, along with many players at Notre Dame in the portal. PJ Haggerty is going to be playing for his 42nd school next season. He's bounced around a lot. Andy, are there any particular names in the transfer portal that really stuck out at you as either surprising or significant?
Well, one name you didn't mention was Caden Lewis, who was the Big East Freshman of the Year from Villanova. That really did surprise me because I thought he was going to be sort of a Jalen Brunson type for Kevin Willard and be a bit of an anchor for them as they turn the program around. But first of all, I don't think there's any Yaxel Lindenborgs in this group. I'll say that right now. Maybe I'll be wrong, but I don't see any name here that is going to suddenly turn you into a national champion. But that being said, all these players are going to think they are that guy and command that kind of money, or at least demand it. And look, I'm sure they're being advised. We don't know what's going to happen, if the 5-year rule is going to come in, if the one-time transfer rule is going to come in, all these things that are floating out that could limit the portal in terms of movement. They're not happening yet. So get in, get your feet wet, and see what you can get. I get it from that side, but I do think it's a little overreactionary and a lot of sleepless nights for a lot of these coaches and programs.
To me, Andy, what's striking is, I used to think about guys who are transferring as really not the best players on their team, because if you're getting the most minutes and the most shots on your team, there's really no reason to transfer. Now there is a reason to transfer. Now that's of course his money. So John Blackwell to me is a great example. He gets a lot of shots and a lot of minutes, so he was going to be the featured player at Wisconsin, but he obviously thinks he can make money elsewhere. You mentioned about a Caden Lewis, his backcourt mate Bryce Lindsey as well, declaring for the portal. I actually thought that Villanova was going to be in really good position financially to compete in this marketplace. That's certainly a shot across the bow that they may not be. Floyd Badunga is interesting. I actually have him projected as going to the NBA. Jonathan Wasserman has him projected as an NBA draft pick. But Andy, to me, the big question is, and who knows if these numbers, how true they really are, but you're already hearing like $5 million for Badunga, right? And so the question becomes, is it worth it? And is it smart spending all that money to get one guy when you can use that same money to have three players and have maybe a little bit of a better competitive culture on your team and have more depth, and whether it's less resentment, but just more the ability to share the sugar? I mean, how do coaches, face a situation where they're going to be paying that much for a single player?
I agree with you. I think it's ridiculous, and Michigan's a great example of that. And maybe Lindenberg probably is not, because he obviously was so highly touted. But it was players who, none of which outside of Lindenberg, were their featured guy at their previous school. And to come to Michigan, they all had to agree essentially like, hey, if you want this to work, your minutes could fluctuate. We're all going to be buying in. So if I'm building a roster, I like the Brad Underwood approach. He told me like what he'd like to see is basically cherry pick a couple guys at the top. Your middle group are more developmental, and then you round it out with some rotation guys, because there's no way that you can have one guy make 5 million or whatever crazy number it is, and then have such a big drop off and scraps for the rest. You've got to be able to balance this if you think you're going to have a successful program.
And of course, the danger is, when you pay one guy that much money, is he really going to come in hungry? How many situations have we heard coaches saying, usually off the record, and then guys getting hurt and not wanting to play through the pain, and you got to pay him anyway. So it is definitely very dicey, very dicey. But I will just close with this, Andy. I think we need to stop saying the word unsustainable. I heard that so much in Indianapolis. Oh, this is unsustainable. Why isn't, and I'm going to go Jay Billis on this, why isn't it unsustainable when LSU pays literally like $100 million in buyouts to football coaches and basketball coaches and who they're bringing in, and Will Wade, and the market will determine the sustainability. If these guys are asking for too much money, if Floyd Badunga can make $5 million, good for him, man. The market will determine what he's worth. So I don't know. There's going to be a lot of hand wringing and a lot of pearl clutching about all of this. This is pro sports. This is a business. And if the alternative is to not pay these players what they're worth, then I am not in favor of that. So it's going to be a crazy few weeks. I actually do feel badly for the coaches in one sense that they're so exhausted and fried when the season is over. You and I are fried, and we don't even work for a living. And now they are going to be nonstop 24/7. In many cases for 2 full months coming off a season before you've even really had a chance to coach your guys. So anyway, that's the transfer portal. Andy and I are going to be back to wrap things up for the Hoops HQ show right after this. Come on back. All right, wrapping things up here on the Hoops HQ show with Seth and Andy. Interesting reporting coming out from Ross Dellinger from Yahoo and other places that the NCAA is trying to put some of this eligibility genie back in the bottle. Want to limit 5 years from the graduation of your high school class for athletes to compete. Andy, what's your take on this? And of course, the big question is legally, does it have any chance of holding up?
Yeah, I think this makes sense. If you do limit the waivers, like the waivers have to be extenuating circumstances, obviously military service, something, medical that keeps you out for a couple of years. the Mormon missions. Other than that, 5 years. You want to play all 5 year? Great. You want to sit one of those out within the 5? That's your choice. But let's try to limit all the waivers coming at you all over the place.
Well, first of all, have we not learned too often that anytime that there's a waiver slash extenuating circumstance process, it gets abused, it gets butchered, the judges get involved, it just becomes a mess. I remember they started that off, all this started happening with the hardship waiver. Well, if you have a sick relative, then and you want to move closer to home, you should be able to play right away. Without having to sit out after a transfer. And there was a huge, massive outbreak of really horrible diseases striking all of these relatives for these players' families. That to me didn't work. Now, I will say that from a legal standpoint, and again, neither of us are lawyers, the NCAA was starting to gain some traction with these judges in the area of eligibility. For all that happened with Charles Bediako, in the end, the judge ruled against him and said the NCAA is able and legally allowed to put eligibility rules in place and hold the line on that. I'm just saying that without congressional legislation, that's going to be very, very hard to hold up. So I am hugely skeptical that absent congressional law, that this rule is going to stand up to legal challenges. Finally, there was no news and not a whole lot of conversation coming out of the NCAA tournament about the potentials of expansion. There was some reportage that maybe it was happening. I don't know what your sources are telling you. I'm still not sort of nailed down on this thing, but what do your bones tell you? Is this, if it happens, that they're going to go to 76? Are your bones telling you this is going to happen?
I still don't know. And obviously, they got to work out the logistics. You know, I mean, there's been a shortage of charter planes. I mean, you got to get the men, you got to do it for the women too, by the way. So women and men, if they go to 76, that's the number that's been out there. Plus, are you getting more money from ESPN for the women, from Turner and CBS for the men? You've got this merger with Paramount and WBD. So does all those things factor in? I'm not convinced. By the way, if it happens, goodbye NIT, goodbye Crown, for what that's worth. All we know is this. There's one fact that's out there right now, is that the Pac-12 is coming back. That means there's 32 automatic bids. We're back to 36 at larges as we speak. That could change, but that is one fact we know right now.
And that is something that the people who want expansion are going to use to say, well, we're losing one spot, so we're only really expanding by 7 and not 8. Pure guesswork. I do think that it is going to happen, but I am far from convinced that it's a done deal. The pending merger between Paramount and CBS and Warner Brothers is definitely a complicating factor, because somehow the NCAA needs to make more money on the tournament, both tournaments, so the value of individual units do not go down. I will only at close with this, Andy. We live in a world, I think people watching this show, we're in the world where we love the NCAA tournament so much, and so many people don't want to see it change. In the grand scheme of things, if this does happen, people are going to be shocked at what a small deal it actually is. It's not going to ruin the tournament. The first time we see a buzzer beater at 2:00 on Tuesday, people are going to forget what they were so up in arms about in the first place. So anyway, much to be determined in the weeks moving forward on this beat. Andy and I will be with you every step of the way. And again, please head on over to hoopshq.com for all of your college basketball coverage, off-season, free agency, coaching carousel, NBA draft coming up, all great stuff. For Andy Katz, I'm Seth Davis. Thanks for watching the Hoops HQ show.